Somebody taught me the wrong way to cook spaghetti squash. Instead of coming out soft and tender, beautifully caramelized with long strands of spaghetti, it came out watery, mushy, and bland. So in order to save you a bunch of time and frustration, I'm going to be teaching you the best and the only way to cook spaghetti squash. And all you're gonna need is an oven, a little oil, and some salt and pepper. Hey there, I'm Lennon Brazil from Evolving Table, where we're all about making doable and delicious meals that are also healthy for you. So if you're ready to get to cooking up this spaghetti squash, then come on in and let's get started. Preheat your oven to 425 degrees. This temperature is hot enough to get that beautiful caramelization on the exterior of the squash, but not so hot that it cooks unevenly in the oven. Now to prepare this ginormous vegetable. It's pretty intimidating, right? Much like its oranger cousin, the butternut squash. Spaghetti squash has a somewhat tough and hard skin that can be extremely challenging to cut through. So here are a few tips that just might help you out. Smaller squash can be easier to cut through than larger ones. So look for one that is just large enough when selecting it at your grocery store. Use a freshly sharpened knife and a cutting board that does not slide around. You'll want a board with these awesome little grips on the bottom. If you're still having trouble, you can always poke holes into the skin and microwave it for a few minutes. This will soften the skin a bit so your knife will slide right through. Once you've got your squash selected and you've got that super sharp knife, be very, very careful here, guys. You're gonna wanna cut the spaghetti squash in half lengthwise. To do this, start in the belly of one side and carefully cut all of the way around, stopping just before you get to the stem. It's extremely difficult and pretty much impossible to cut the stem in half with your knife. So instead, when you get to this part, simply pull the squash apart with your hands until the two halves separate. Using a large spoon with a relatively sharp edge, scoop out and remove all of the seeds and the strands. It's okay if you still have a little bit of those strands hanging out in your squash, but you do want to try and remove the majority of them. Next, we're going to drizzle on 1 tablespoon of olive oil over each of the halves. Rub it in so the entire inner surface of the squash half is coated. Sprinkle each half with 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/8 teaspoon of black pepper. Since spaghetti squash is pretty large, you'll want to grab a baking sheet that's big enough to comfortably fit both of these halves. I'm using one here today that's called a baker's half sheet pan and is roughly 17 by 11 inches. If you do not have one this large, you can always use 2 smaller pans instead. Just make sure they have a nice rim around the edge to catch any juices that may run off. Line the baking sheet with a piece of parchment paper. Don't use aluminum foil. It will stick to the squash and you'll inevitably get some heavy metals into the vegetable while it's roasting. Place both halves of the spaghetti squash cut side down. Now we just need to pop them into our preheated 425-degree oven for 40 to 50 minutes. Depending on the size, you may need to cook the squash for a shorter or longer length of time. You'll know the squash is done cooking when it shreds easily with a fork. If you take a close look, you'll notice that the strands of spaghetti squash are actually running from one side to the other. In order to get the longest strands of spaghetti possible, you'll want to place a large fork into the flesh at the stem end and pull towards the opposite end. You can serve it as a side dish with a drizzle of fresh lemon juice and a sprinkle of Parmesan cheese and fresh herbs. Or you can turn it into the main meal with this lasagna stuffed spaghetti squash. Thanks so much for hanging out, y'all. I'll see you again soon.